Live? Hey there, it's Jordan. I am here in Cleveland on the steps of City Hall, Cleveland, Ohio. We've been here since yesterday, and we're just waiting actually for some activists and local officials here to hold a press conference. Obviously, we know about the Flint water crisis and the lead there, but there's lead problems in a lot of other cities, including Cleveland, that really most people don't know about. So there's going to be a press conference here behind me probably in the next few minutes. So Cleveland has had a lead problem. But before we get to the lead, I should talk to you about Cleveland in general. Obviously, Ohio is a swing state in the national election, but Cleveland actually has the highest level of childhood poverty in America. In 2018, it beat out Detroit, which is obviously not a great distinction to rank number one in childhood poverty. I believe it was at, let me check to confirm, I believe it was at 48.7%. 48.7% child poverty here in Cleveland. Cleveland, like most American cities you're starting to see, is becoming highly gentrified. You have a lot of development here in the downtown region, which has pushed a lot of working people out. Prices going up. You've also had in Ohio in general a lot of economic struggle when it comes to jobs being offshored. We just did some interviews in Lordstown, Ohio, which is one of the plants, the General Motors plants, that they're closing down. They're closing down 5 plants, and they're going to be laying off nearly 15,000 people, 1,500 of which is from Lordstown, Ohio. But in Cleveland in specific, there has been a legacy lead problem. A lot of that lead problem comes from homes that haven't been kept up. You have old lead paint in a lot of these homes where children are growing up, and a lot of these homes with older infrastructure that hasn't been updated, that hasn't had the lead paint removed, frankly, are in poorer communities, heavier black populations. And last year, they found that 17% of children in Cleveland were found to have high lead levels. That number might seem very high, and it is, 17% of children having high lead levels, but it's actually going down. At one point, the lead levels here in children were as high as 30 to 40%. 30 to 40% of the children they were finding to have elevated lead levels. I don't need to explain to you what lead does to your body. It affects your brain. It affects your organs, especially in children, because your brain, your bones, your organs are still developing. So there is no safe level of lead for anyone, really, but particularly in children, it could destroy your growth. We have seen in communities from Cleveland to Chicago to Detroit to other areas, high lead levels also, research has shown, are linked to heavier crime because lead affects your mood, your behavior. So it is all connected. But the 17% level that I'm talking about that they found of kids is actually more alarming than just 17% because they haven't even tested the majority of children in Cleveland. As part of Medicaid, these children are supposed to be tested, but they're not. The full amount of children here in Cleveland, which I'm sure these activists will be talking about during this press conference, have not been tested. So if you're already finding that 17% of children in a major American city have high lead levels, yet you haven't even tested the majority of them, what are the real lead levels here, right? And also, why is this, Trump today, which means many people might not be watching this because everybody's focused on Trump. Trump declared a national emergency for a non-existent emergency. There is no emergency on the border wall. We know this. I don't want to waste time talking about Trump. But he did a press conference. He announced a national emergency. Well, Flint is going on 5 years without clean water. 17% of children in Cleveland have elevated lead levels. And again, The majority have not been tested. We just came from Detroit, where we interviewed people about the growing water crisis there. They have extremely high lead levels in the water. And by the way, it isn't just lead in a lot of these cities. They're not testing for the full spectrum of bacteria. They're not testing for the full spectrum of PFAS. PFAS is a cancer-causing chemical that has been found recently in many American water sources that causes cancer. It's a byproduct of the manufacturing of Teflon and other products. So it's not just lead. They're not even testing for full contaminants because the EPA doesn't even have federal standards for a lot of these contaminants. So to me, I don't know how you wouldn't call this an emergency. I mean, if you're watching and you have children, wouldn't it be an emergency to you if you don't know if they're drinking lead? If you don't know if they're drinking cancer-causing chemicals? If you don't know if they're drinking bacteria? And every city's different. So in Flint, it might have been the lead pipes underground and switching to a toxic water source. Here, it's heavily because of the lead paint and other lead, because they have not really gone into a lot of these communities with old housing, but predominantly poorer communities, because they're spending all their resources on gentrifying and really building up downtown communities. I mean, if you go to major American cities, it's all the same story. You have a downtown region that's had billions and billions and billions of dollars poured into for sports stadiums, restaurants, entertainment complexes, you name it, and it's pushing working people out of those downtown areas because the prices go up. And it's becoming more and more of a tale of two cities, whether it's in Cleveland, whether it's in Chicago, Detroit, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, the list goes on, New York, the list goes on and on and on. So that's why we're here. It's an important topic. Obviously, if we're going to connect this to the progressive movement, Nina Turner, the president of our revolution, obviously was a surrogate for Bernie Sanders during the 2016 campaign. She was a state senator in Ohio, and she's from Cuyahoga County, which Cleveland, I believe, is part of. So this is a major, major issue here in Cleveland, and that's why I got in touch with some of the local activists on the ground. And frankly, I was just talking to one activist before I went live. The Democratic Party has been in charge here in Cleveland for many, many years. And now we have activists walking out here. The Democratic Party has been in charge in Cleveland for many, many years. So whose responsibility is this? Is it Donald Trump? Is it Democratic Party? Is it local officials? I mean, the bottom line is, and this isn't fear-mongering, the bottom line is people don't know what their children are drinking, and this is affecting young children's brains, their body, their behavior, and it has a ripple-down effect for the rest of their lives. So I'm going to shut up now, and we'll might have a few minutes before the press conference starts, but we'll be airing the press conference live, and then I'll do some interviews after that. So hang tight for a few minutes.
I did not move.
Would you mind holding this?
Sure, and I'll pass it on as we okay. 92 together, there you go.
92.
Rebecca,
We got it.
Steve, Milo, and you. All right. Thank you guys. Ready? Yeah, let's go down so they can be seen. Yeah, they can be seen. Hey. Okay, we're going to get started. We want to thank everybody who's here. We have representatives from all the organizations that make up Clash. This is our official day that we're kicking off our petition drive. We are serious about the solutions that we feel that this proposal begins to bring to the city in the area of lead poisoning. While the other coalition that we want to work with is meeting and having subgroups and breakout sessions, we're going to break out into the community with our petitions. They are ready, they are here, and we want to send a message that we have to make the city lead safe. And we have to raise the money with the private sector to bring everyone to the table. So I'm excited. We're going to go upstairs and we're going to talk with the council clerk, and we're going to make sure that we get it certified and get moving. And I'm going to pass it on to Rebecca.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Jeff. It's so important that we not delay, and that's part of why we're here today. What we know from the statistics from the Ohio Department of Health is that every day 4 children in the city of Cleveland test positive for elevated blood lead levels above what the CDC says is acceptable. And the city relaunched and reaffirmed its commitment to lead-safe housing on January 22nd. In that time, enough days have passed that 92 children, we believe, have tested positive for elevated blood lead levels since that time. We can't wait any longer. The city can't wait any longer. We hope to work with City Council to take this bill, take it to committee, and have that open discussion about what is going to work for Cleveland. But we believe this bill is the correct place to start, and it's time for action on it. Oh, Steve, I apologize.
I'm Steve Oleko with the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. As Jeff and Rebecca have said, the time to act is now. The time for meetings, committees, and summits has long since passed. Today, we are beginning the process of allowing the citizens of the city of Cleveland to decide whether or not they want a lead-safe ordinance soon, whether they want that 92 number to go up or down, or whether or not they want more meetings, committees, and summits. We will be returning here in a few weeks with the citizens of the city of Cleveland's answer to that question when we deliver the petitions with enough signatures to get the initiative on the ballot. Our preference, however, is not to have to come back. Our preference is that the folks who are meeting soon at the Jerry Sue Thornton Center, the city leaders, the foundations, decide to look at our ordinance, decide to fast track it through Cleveland City Council so that our kids stop getting poisoned now. The time for action is now. Clash is taking action now.
Thank you. My name is Milo Corman, and I'm here on behalf of the Cleveland chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. For too long, the people of Cleveland have been told that real change is impossible. Politicians meet behind closed doors to shape the future of our city to benefit the rich and the powerful. Anyone who questions this arrangement is told that that's just how things work around here, and there's nothing that can be done. But standing here today is a group of people who are not content to accept the status quo. On the issue of lead poisoning, we are not content with more studies, more empty promises, and more of the same. To protect our babies, our homes must be lead safe. And we will not simply wait for our elected leaders to acknowledge this obvious truth. We will take to the streets, to the voters of the city, to exercise our electoral rights. We know that a better world will never be handed down by a powerful few, but must be demanded, fought for, and won by the organized voices of common people. Thank you.
In 1963, when Dr. King wrote, "Why We Can't Wait," after being challenged by a clergy that felt his call for civil rights could wait until a more opportune time, his message began with a plea to save our children from deplorable housing conditions. Today, we are challenged by the 17 legislators that failed to acknowledge our plea for not only civil but human rights of families, particularly children, that can't speak for themselves. As parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends, we are here to let our legislators know that we have to create a cradle-to-life pipeline that enhances the lives of children in the city of Cleveland. We can't have a viable city that works for everyone when we continue to host summits, meetings, and avoid passing legislation that ends this lead crisis. As a community, we have sat on the sidelines for far too long. That's why we are here with clipboards, petitions, and pens saying to you why we can't wait. To the citizens in the city of Cleveland, we need you to volunteer, to donate, to sign the petition, and to help us. To the parents of poisoned children, please know that your babies matter. Join us as we take the health of our babies to the ballot. Sign the petition today.
Okay, any questions?
Do we have any questions?
Can you kind of talk about? My understanding is they haven't even tested the majority of children here in Cleveland. Yet they still found 17% last year had elevated lead levels. Why aren't they testing the majority of children?
You want to take it, Ivanka? Sure. So there's a variety of reasons. We have a few overlapping reasons why kids aren't being tested, but part of it is that we haven't made it a priority. And the latest numbers we have are actually even higher. Up to a quarter of our kindergarteners are coming in with levels above what the CDC has recommended, and over 90% of incoming kindergarteners that were tested had some exposure to lead. So part of what we're doing here is saying, we no longer need to go kid by kid. We no longer need to wait for a kid to be poisoned. We don't want to use our kids as lead detectors. We need to go to the homes first and fix them.
And also, obviously, a lot of people don't know this. Cleveland has the highest child poverty rate in the country. I think 48.7% last year. So can you kind of talk about the connection between, I mean, frankly, like a lot of American cities, you're seeing gentrification going on, high poverty, and frankly, inaction when it comes, because a lot of these neighborhoods are poorer and minority.
Do you want to take it?
Well, we all know that we have many problems associated with poverty. And one of them significantly deals with the condition of the housing and the failure of the government, the failure of the community to prioritize those impacts by poverty, to go after poverty. It is there's no excuse for us to continue to allow for Cleveland to lead the pack of impoverished communities. So infant mortality, lead poisoning, and many other problems come from that. So inevitably, this discussion is about improving the conditions in which poor and minority families and children live in, and for us attacking the problem holistically with that way. But we know we have the crisis that we can go right now and stop this problem by going in and requiring a higher standard for our rental properties, and then requiring the private sector to give as much commitment to these issues that they do in many of the other major issues, such as conventions and conferences and Amazon headquarters approaches, you know.
And my last question for really anybody. So you have President Trump today declared a national emergency on the southern border. You have the Democratic Party nationally. It seems that their main focus is Russia. Does anybody have a message either for the president, the federal, because it's not just Cleveland, you got Flint, Detroit, Milwaukee, lead problems in a lot of other cities. Anybody have a message for President Trump, the Democratic Party, because this would seem to be an actual emergency?
Yeah, a clear message for the Democratic Party. If you want folks to support your agenda, you have to come around more often than election time with fancy slogans. This is a grassroots issue, trying to get a lead-safe initiative passed. The Democratic Party locally should embrace this.
This is a national crisis. So one of the things that we talk about is we talk about the things that are going over all across the country. And we know that all across the country in the urban core, they're having problems with lead. And so for us, when we look at our numbers and we look at the fact that since they had their press conference announcing that they were forming a committee, a coalition, we had 92 children who've been poisoned. So we equate that to be about $92 million. So we don't need $8 billion for a wall. We need to use our money to create infrastructure to save our children and to make sure that our infrastructure in our community is sound and that our children are safe.
One more. Tell me who you're from.
Yeah, my name is Ted Seuss, and I'm with SPAN Ohio, which stands for Single Payer Action Network. And we're working tirelessly and have been doing so for decades to bring health care to all Americans, certainly to all Ohioans. And this is just like the health care crisis. From last Saturday until just this past Wednesday, all over America, in 160 cities and in over 400 locations, we held events called Barnstorm events. These events were part of a national grassroots movement to gain volunteers to grow our body of people to bring health care, otherwise named by Jayapal as Medicare for all Americans, which would only save money and save lives and bring to our inner cities, to people who are poor, the right to health care, because health care is a human right. It's not something that you should have money for. It's something that be American, just as in every other developed country in the world. Health care is a human right, not in America, where we have the only for-profit healthcare system, which is the same problem with all of this, which is money, money, money. Now, I'm not against money, but I'm also in favor of being our brother's keepers, and that's what we care about here.
Thank you. Get out of the cold. Okay. So there you have it. They're going into the I guess the city clerk to officially file their petition, and they're basically starting a petition drive for a lead-safe Cleveland, which essentially is to get resources and money, to actually change this, to actually test the majority of children, to actually give services for the children that have been poisoned. I mean, you heard it. I think they said 92 children. 92 children tested positive in, I believe it was a week or two. I mean, that's astounding. That's astounding. Yet you have really, a lot of people kind of criticize me, stop talking about the other media, stop talking about the other media. Well, you have to talk about the other media, because the big reason that stuff like this happens is because the majority of people are not aware it's happening. The majority of people in major American cities have no idea that there's a lead problem, or a PFAS problem, or a TTHM problem, or I could list many other chemicals. Hey, do you have a minute? Yeah. So say your name again.
My name is Milo Corman, and I'm here with the Cleveland Democratic Socialists of America.
So one thing that stands out to me here is I guarantee you a lot of people watching have no idea that there's a lead issue in Cleveland. Probably they don't know there's one in Detroit. Probably they don't know there's one in Milwaukee, and the list goes on. Is that in part because of our national media? Is that in part because of people's kind of apathy to what's going on? How do we wake more people up? Because honestly, like lead, it might not kill you right away, but it will basically stunt your growth, your mind, all those things.
Yeah, I think to answer your question about why people don't know, so the cities you just mentioned are all these Midwestern Rust Belt cities that have experienced not the same amount of growth and development as maybe on the coasts. And because lead is a problem mostly in Cleveland from lead paint, which was banned in 1978, cities that haven't had a ton of development since then are still using the old housing stock. I think it's like 90% of housing stock in Cleveland or something like that is pre-1978. So those cities are most at risk. And then the other reason why people don't know about it is because the populations that are most affected by it and who suffer most from it are poor, are black, are the working class, and we don't cover that in our society. We cover the tragedies of the rich all the time, and for a poor kid growing up who already has so many other cards stacked against them with a racist criminal justice system and an underfunded education system, is being poisoned from birth, and we just don't talk about that because of the populations who it's affecting. So I think that's how I would answer your question, is you can look at who it's targeting, and that's why we don't talk about it.
Right. And I wanted to ask you about Cleveland and Ohio in general, because it's not just lead. Everything is connected. So we're downtown. It's nice and pretty, but pretty gentrified, I would say. You've had a build-up in certain areas while the rest of the state has kind of been left for itself. Do you see gentrification as connected to this?
I do. I see specifically how this issue illustrates the way that cities will choose certain populations and areas to develop and others to underdevelop and leave without resources. And I think this is just emblematic of that, like many other things. You look at downtown, and a lot of money has poured in. The last time there was a movement like this in Cleveland, and anyone in Cleveland will know about this, but I know you have viewers from all over, was when the city council voted to give millions of dollars to Dan Gilbert to expand the Q Arena just down the street. And there was a mass movement of people, many of the same people we saw behind us right there, to do a petition drive just like this one to stop that. And eventually that movement was betrayed by its leaders under heavy pressure from government. And I think that is exactly the same thing we're talking about, where there's development that comes, but it comes to help Dan Gilbert, and it brings people downtown, and that money is great to spend here, but it doesn't get spent anywhere else in the city. And we leave large swaths of the city with no resources, no funding, and in some cases, no futures.
And lastly, you're with Democratic Socialists of America. I mean, there is a role of the National Democratic Party. Like, the only fundraising emails I ever see is on Trump, Russia, Stormy Daniels. I don't see anything. And honestly, forget like what's morally right. It's so politically easy. Like, this is how you attract working people in the Midwest. You fight for their issues, but it doesn't seem like it's either they don't care or they just are ignorant.
I think the abandonment by the Democratic Party of local politics in the last, I don't know how many years, the decades, as a big reason for why things are the way they are right now. And I got to say, I'm heartened to see that in recent years, it seems like that trend is reversing, that there are new waves of grassroots people, both electorally and non-electorally, working to change the system. And I'm very heartened to see that, but we're starting from a huge disadvantage. But we can't, it's the Democratic Party is active here in Cleveland. They control everything, and we are going to need them on this. Even if they're not with us yet, for this to work, for this to be enforced, we're going to need them. They're going to have to see the light. And it's on us to mobilize people and beat on their doors so they can't help but let us in.
One more. What specifically are you signing petitions for?
Yeah, so this petition, this is for an ordinance that would require landlords of pre-1978 housing to get their rental properties certified as lead safe before they can be rented out. Right now, the only lead enforcement comes after a child is poisoned. Then that triggers a whole bunch of things where the home must be remediated, but obviously that is too late. So this would say that any pre-1978 property, the burden is on the landlord now to certify it as lead safe.
And if it's not lead safe, they have to.
They face fines if they or they have to take it off the rental market.
Cool. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Do you mind? Hey, do you mind leaving your number with my cameraman?
Yeah. I want to talk to you also to get this video.
Yeah.
We really want that.
Yeah. Just connect with him.
May I say something?
Yeah. What's your name?
Lou.
Lou?
Yes, Lou. My point here is national emergency. The damage to the environment, doesn't matter drinking water, lead poisoned housing, it's the same. Polluted airs. This affects all our people's quality in their life. So babies are way more vulnerable. However, today you see the number 92. If you don't do anything, this can go up to 9,200 quickly and easily. So we really need people to be aware of that. Just because the government do not take this as a priority, and we should give up. Today now we have the action started. You can sign the petition. You can start volunteering, just like any other good causes. Remember, your voice is not heard. That puts your life in jeopardy. However, you have to understand the city and the county, they do have their limits. So we do have to watch out some other factors which will affect the issue. And if we don't work on it, we don't tackle these obstacles, we will go nowhere. That means they will have 92 with way more zeros behind. And the city and the county will actually go perish with this whole environment. So people, please be aware. You have to participate no matter what.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ivanka, do you have a minute? Whew.
Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
It's important. So you actually are the first person I got in touch with this when I saw this alarming number, and now I'm even more alarmed that they're saying it's gone up since that study. Can you kind of talk about your fight over the years? Because it's not like you guys just started this today. You've been fighting for them to take this seriously about the lead problem for many years.
Yeah, this has been 3 years in the making. So we started off 3 years ago meeting, coalescing public, private, and community members to talk about this issue and to figure out what we could do as a solution. We brought in speakers that were national speakers that focused on lead. We brought in local speakers. We actually brought in the people from Toledo who had recently passed their own lead ordinance. We looked at the things that were going on in Rochester and in California, and so we actually had a plan. We took our plan, we molded it down to, we needed to make sure that we talked to all the city council members. So we talked to the city council members to see if they were on board. So Jeff was one of the city council people at the time who decided that, so he was Councilman Johnson at the time, but he decided that he wanted to take on this issue. We asked him if he would work with legal aid in order to draft us some legislation. He drafted an ordinance, which was 99017, and we expected it to be heard. And what happened was, a year went past. Council came to our meeting. They promised us it would be heard, and it was never heard. They never put it to the floor. So last year, we were sitting in a meeting, and everybody said, so what do we do now? And I said, we take it to the people. Let the people decide where this is going to go, because it's obvious that if we leave it up to council, it's not going to go anywhere. And so for me, at the same time last year, we talked about the $88 million that the city of Cleveland gave to Dan Gilbert to put a patio on the Q. And so my thing is... Q
is the arena where the Cavaliers...
Yeah. And so if the Q can get a deal, can the community get a deal? And so we are here because of the children. And as you saw the numbers today, since they made an announcement that they were forming a coalition, 92 children have been poisoned.
And that was only in like a month or two?
Yeah. And so we know that about 4 every day. And so with that rate, and we know that the cost of those children averages to about $1 million for each child. So it's $92 million of the cost associated with children that are lead poisoned across their lifespan. We have to do better than this. We're wasting money. We're wasting resources. The things that we're doing on planning meetings and planning summits, and instead of actually looking at what we all have already crafted and made it better, we made it into a bill. And now we're going to take it to the community and let the community decide.
And lastly, talk about the racial component here. I mean, obviously, Cleveland has the highest childhood poverty rate in the country, which is obviously not a good mark. And a lot of these communities where they have old housing stock, haven't changed anything, is African American.
Yeah. Well, Cleveland is about 54% African American. Total minority population is 60%. And so what we look at is when we look at the areas where predominantly African American and poor communities live, we have not only old housing stock, houses that were built before 1978, but we have housing stock that is in some cases irreparable. And in other cases, it can be repaired. But a lot of the community, because of poverty, they don't have the dollars to fix it. Most of these communities are living in rental properties. And so that is why we have asked landlords to step up. If you are a landlord, you are there because that is your business. And so because you are making money off of this, we need to make sure that you're ensuring that your places are lead safe before children and their families move in.
And one more. Like I said, is the public getting a little jilted as far as what is an emergency and what is not? Because all of this chatter about the border and Russia and all these things, I mean, you got children right now could be drinking poison.
So one of the things I posted actually this morning on Facebook, I said, it's amazing that the federal government, the state government, and local government don't know what the definition of an emergency is. So having a wall is not an emergency. Having a stadium built is not an emergency. Making sure that we protect young people whose lives will be changed for the rest of their lives, that is an emergency. So we need to understand what the definition of an emergency is, and if we don't, we need to elect new leaders.
Thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, folks, that's it from Cleveland. I must tell you, it's a little cold. My hands are a little frostbitten, and I know Ty wants to get the hell out of here, too. So we'll post shorter clips of this. We have a long drive back to New York that we're about to start, so I'll probably be live a little bit later. Maybe I'll probably go live at like 5 o'clock, which is the normal time I go live from the car. Just to kind of recap this trip, I will be live all day Sunday for our marathon. I have not planned anything, but we will be live on Sunday to kind of recap this trip. I will ask you, I don't know what we're at now, but before I went live, we were $100 away from $43,000 raised on GoFundMe. I always keep it real, so I must tell you, while we've been out on this reporting trip this week, we hit Warren, Michigan, we hit Detroit, we hit Lordstown, Ohio. We hit Cleveland, Ohio. We've been pretty badly suppressed on YouTube. Most of our videos are not actually getting to our full 27,000 subscribers. So hopefully, if you got a couple bucks, if you appreciate actual reporting, if you want us to continue doing this, definitely hit it. Definitely let us know in the GoFundMe. Also, we're trying to grow our paid membership, which is the most important thing. It's honestly, that's even more important than GoFundMe. Right now, I think we're at 190 paid monthly members. You could do monthly, you could do annual. I really would love to get to 200, so that's 10 more, maybe even by Sunday. So if you have, it's as cheap as $5 a month, $10 a month. I will tell you folks, stuff like this kind of reinvigorates me for why I do this. Because when we hear in 2020, if Trump is reelected, you know, it's the progressives' fault, or it's Russia's fault, or whoever's fault. No. It's the Democratic Party's fault for not paying attention to these issues. And frankly, it's the national corporate media's fault. I mean, this should be, if not leading the news, covered extensively, because it's not just Cleveland. You got, I mean, I've named the cities, but you got Flint, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh has a lead problem. New York City now has I don't know if it's lead, but they have a water problem. There's a water problem, pretty much, you could find it in any community if you look hard enough. And it affects children, it affects adults. I mean, I won't even get into private discussions I've had with friends and sources in Flint who could barely get out of bed in the morning from the lead poisoning they experience. So please, GoFundMe, become a member. If you don't have the money, we understand. If you do have $5 a month, $10 a month, we're showing you what we're doing with it. This is what we're doing with it, actual journalism. So I'll be live again later. Thank you for watching. Share this video. Peace out.